In 1965, Norman McLaren filmed these dancers in Montreal, Canada. This performance would never be seen. Instead, 2 years later, moviegoers would see McLaren's transformations of this dance in his film Pas de Deux.
A work of art has to have cohesiveness and consistency, but not so much cohesiveness and consistency as to become boring, and not so much non-cohesiveness as to become, as to sort of fall apart. It has to be organically linked, and yet it must have surprises in it that you don't expect, but the surprises that are relevant to the whole work.
This is a photograph of Norman McLaren, the filmmaker, taken at his christening in Stirling, Scotland in 1914. 19 years after the birth of cinema.
If there's a technical thing invented, a person with an artist's nature is likely to take that thing and use it. We're getting young artists using computers to make a new kind of animation, a new kind of type of film. And that's only right and proper. That's the way it should be. I know that if I had been growing up now, I would have gone right in and tried to get hold of a computer and start doing things with it. But one is a child of one's age. One was born at a certain time, one uses certain things.
In his early 20s, when he was studying interior design at the Glasgow School of Art, McLaren saw films by the Russians, Eisenstein and Pudovkin.
And I realized here is a new area that's not really been explored, just been invented about 20 or 30 years ago. And so much has been done in the field of drawing and painting for thousands of years, so many styles, and that I considered it at that age as a dead art, drawing and painting. The new art of the future was movies. I thought, I will make movies.
McLaren joined the Art School Film Club. Galvanized by his energy, the club had many successes at amateur film festivals. At one of these festivals, the adjudicator was documentary filmmaker John Grierson. And in 1936, McLaren went to work for Grierson at the film unit of the British General Post Office. There, McLaren learnt the craft and the discipline of cinema. In October 1939, he emigrated to the USA to continue his work in experimental film. In 1941, he moved to Canada. John Grierson, the founding head of Canada's government film agency, the National Film Board, asked McLaren to come and make films of an experimental nature. McLaren would stay at the NFB until his retirement in 1984. During those 43 years, he founded the NFB Animation Department, made 50 films, and received over 200 awards for his achievements.
A long time ago, in the 30s, shortly after I began making movies, I discovered surrealist painting. One of the surrealists whose work I very much admired was Yves Tanguy. So one day in 1944, I decided to improvise a moving, growing landscape in a surrealistic manner. And this is it. It's much influenced by the way Tanguy uses space and forms in his paintings. I must confess I don't really know what any of it means. It all comes out of my subconscious. I call it Tanguy Landscape Test. It never got any further than what you see now. That was one of the problems with making a surreal film, keeping up the inspiration while constantly improvising.
The surrealist idea of the subconscious as a source of artistic inspiration was, for a long time, the major force in McLaren's creative process. It would remain an influence right to the end of his career.
Knowing about surrealism and having seen just one or two surrealist paintings released me to make a film like Love on the Wing, where the imagery keeps metamorphosing.
Divertissement by Jacques Ibert was the musical inspiration for Love on the Wing, McLaren's loud entry into the world of experimental cinema, his first professional step as a maker of fancy and fantasy.
The sudden juxtaposition of two things very different from each other, as in a dream. The spirit is able to jump around with an extreme rapidity in spite of the laws of logic.
The foreground images in Love on the Wing were made without a camera by drawing directly with pen and ink onto the film.
It's a very simple machine. There's not much to it. This is the film. It runs through a holder here. And there's a light that shines through glass in my holder. And I use pen and India ink, just an ordinary pen. And I draw on each frame of film, making each drawing slightly different from the one before. Finish drawing that, I pull the film up and begin drawing the next second.
Oh, yes. Now, this kind of thing sounds most interesting. I think it'd be rather satisfying business, painting straight onto a film like that.
Well, it's all a matter of not letting the complexities of filmmaking get you down. I try as much as possible to preserve in my relationship to the film the same closeness and intimacy that exists between a painter and his canvas. In normal filmmaking, everybody knows there's an elaborate series of optical, chemical, and mechanical processes, and these stand between the artist and his finished work. How much simpler it is for an artist with his canvas. So I decided to throw away the camera and instead work straight on the film with pens and inks, brushes, and paint. If I don't like what I do, I use a damp cloth, rub it out, and begin again.
Well, that sounds like fun. It sounds simple. I suppose it's a lot simpler for you than it would be, say, for me.
Well, yes.
You can turn me into anything you like. A loaf of bread or a brand new pipe, a stylish hat, a roast of meat, a thrilling book or a comfy seat, a yard of cloth, a pound of cheese, a ticket to a movie, or anything you please.
McLaren also once said, handmade cinema was like watching thought, if thought could be seen.
I wasn't aware of the general line of what was going to happen 10, 20 seconds from now. I was always aware of how things were developing. This was going to happen in the next 5 seconds, but a minute from now in the film, what's going to be happening, I just didn't know.
So the subconscious plays a very important role. It perhaps has the whole thing pretty well formed from start to finish. It's a matter of the consciousness not knowing that form, but creating it and getting uncomfortable, nervous, or neurotic even if it's going wrong.
Once you start on a film, but once you make an initial statement, it forecloses all sorts of possibilities. You're narrowing down the channel in which you can progress. It's like starting off a melody in one key. You could go off at a tangent, then come back and go off at another tangent. Theme and variations, you could build it in to the structure. A great work often uses very few elements. May do theme and variations on them, or may do a rondo form or sonata form. Many of those structures in music I found helpful as guidelines for structures in abstract films, or in films in general.
There are two kinds of abstract film. One is pure abstract films. In other words, the images you cannot recognize them as anything else than what they are. They don't suggest human beings or any kind of creatures, and they don't move with anything but geometric kind of movement, like the film lines, horizontal lines, vertical, mosaic, and spheres. On the other hand, there are abstract films where there are objects which are identifiable. I'm thinking of the film arithmetic. There are numerals, and the numerals, by their behavior and action, performed as if they were animals or human beings, pushing and shoving and reacting and fighting with each other. And in quite a few of my abstract films, the elements like a blue dot and a gray dot take on the personality by virtue of their movement. The images or forms may be abstract, but the movement is non-abstract. It's humanly motivated.
So the motion can be spoken of as separate from the particular shape or form that moves. It is this motion which is at the heart of cinema. And that makes film such a powerful medium. Doing Hen Hop, for instance, I